Today we're starting a brand new series to kick off the year called How to Really Change. Emphasis on the word really. How to really change. So you ready to jump into the word? Yeah. Are you sure? Yeah. Come on. Did anyone bring a copy of the scriptures with you today? Anyone bring a? Amazing. If you do not have a Bible, you don't own one, on your way out, there's some on the table. You can take that and keep that. That is our gift to you. We want everyone to own a copy of the scriptures because we believe that this is not just a book that we read, but this is a book that, come on, that if we open it up, that the Spirit of God will use the Word of God to help the children of God look more like the Son of God. And so as we open it up today, my hope and my prayer has been that we would look different than the way that we showed up because we encounter the living God. So if it's good, you can say. If you don't know what to say, you can give me a Christian mood that sounds like this. Love it. Show of hands, how many of you are New Year's resolutions people? New Year's resolutions people. Okay, a couple. Love it. How many of you are word of the year people? You're a word of the year. It's amazing. That's a more spiritual New Year's resolution. That's what that is. I love that. How many of you are, I don't know how you are still doing this. This kind of blows my mind that some people like this still exist. But how many of you somehow find this ancient kind of printed material called a magazine, and you find scissors, and you cut out images, and you make a vision board for what your next year is going to look like? How many people? Amazing. That's awesome. Y'all exist still, and you're right next to each other. That is awesome. So good. How many of you are in the category of I'm a rebel and I don't do any of that stuff because you're not going to get me with your gimmicks? How many of you are that person? Okay, cool. I love it. So we all, for some of y'all, that was the first time you ever Christian mood. You're like, that's me. That's me. I love it. No matter where you are or how you're evaluating the new year, we all come with it with different perspectives. But I do think that there is a unifying desire for all of us, not just us in the room, but honestly all of humanity. Here's the question that I would ask. How many of us in the room, show of hands, want your life to change in some way this year from last year? Right. It's all of us. Have you ever thought about why, though? Like, what is it that's in us that desires change? What is it about us that December 30th and 31st comes around and we immediately start purging our closet and trying to take stuff to Goodwill? What is it about us that sees the clock about to hit midnight and we know with a new year comes some new change that is desired within us? Like, what is it about us that wants to see change so badly? Is it cultural hype? Like, is it the idea of New Year's resolution is so ingrained in our culture that it's become ingrained in us, and even if we want to reject it, we know that, like, we should at least consider some sort of change? Is it societal advancement? Like, have we become so advanced as a society that we've learned that we need to be self-reflective in order for the advancement of humanity? And so because our society is just progress, we've gone, okay, like, we just need to reflect on ourselves in order to make the world a better place. Like, what is it in us that so desperately desires change? I want to submit to you a different idea. That the reason that all of us in the room desire change in our life actually has nothing to do with culture at all, and it has very little to do with you. Romans 2:15 says this, that God has written his law on our heart. That because all of us are made in the image of God, the morality of God is actually woven into the very fabric of our being. That even if you don't have a relationship with God personally, you innately know things that are good and evil. You innately know things that are right and wrong. You innately know that there is a way to live and a way not to live. And it doesn't matter if you try to suppress it. It doesn't matter if you try to ignore it. The reality is that the morality of God has been written on our hearts. And because that's the case, we have become aware. We've become aware of a gap. A gap between who we are and who we should be. That there is a gap between the version of us that we are today and the version that we know we should be. And so our desire to change is actually rooted in a desire that's innate within us to try to close the gap of who we are and who we should be. And the way that we try to close that gap, the way that we've been taught in our society to close the gap is this. We close the gap with our goals. And so we make resolutions, and we make vision boards, and we get a gym membership, and we clean out our closet, And we make promises to ourselves and we make promises to others and we start setting goals. And so for many of us, the beginning of our year looks like this. I'm gonna lose 50 pounds this year, that's right. High school body is coming back. I'm not drinking 6-packs, I'm getting one. Come on, somebody. Yeah, that's gonna look good. Ooh, I'm gonna stop drinking as much. I mean, college football season is almost over, so this is gonna be way easier, you know? I've heard that like leaders are readers, so I'm gonna start reading some books this year. And my goal is to try to read one a month so I can sound really intelligent in front of my friends. We're gonna do that for sure. Yeah, I'm gonna start fixing some things. And I'm gonna set some new rhythms. And I'm gonna try harder and I'm gonna be better and my life is going to look so much better at the end of this year. We kick off the year polishing a trash can. And when we do that, y'all, one of two things usually happens. That you either do this and you realize, like, nothing's really changing. And I'm not getting any better. And so I don't know that it's worth doing this anymore. Like, I don't want to keep waking up at 5:30 in the morning to go to the gym because the scale is not changing. I'm done. That's one result. Or the other result that I actually think is worse and more dangerous for us is that we actually accomplish the goal. That you lose the 50 pounds, but now that you've accomplished the goal and you look better on the outside, the insecurity that actually led you to the gym on the inside is still there and it hasn't changed at all. That you hit the financial goal and you're wealthier than you've ever been. You've made more money than you could have ever imagined, but you look around and you're disconnected from your friends and from your family and the bank account is full, but internally you are bankrupt. I think what's actually worse is that you could go the whole year without drinking, but you never actually dealt with the anxiety that led you to drink in the first place, and so now you're just using something else to cope. And you've considered it success, but nothing's really changed at all. Now, I want to be super clear, y'all. I'm not saying that setting goals is bad. I'm not saying that you shouldn't do some things differently this year than you did last year. What I'm saying, though, is this, is that external goals will never close the internal gaps. That your external goals, your behavior modification, is never going to change the internal gap that is within you. What will happen is you will just find yourself exhausted and frustrated, and it will never lead to the change that you actually desire. And here's what's worse. When we live this way, it not only finds us frustrated, but this is actually one of the most frustrating things to Jesus. This is one of the things that drives him insane. That when he watches us focus on our external life with disregard to our internal life, he's going, guys, stop. Really? Matthew 23 is where we're going to be in the text today. And what we're going to find is this warning from Jesus. As you turn there, I'll give you a little context. It's the end of Jesus' ministry. He's preached a ton of sermons. He's healed people. He's raised people from the dead. The crowds are growing. People are following him. They're repenting. They're turning away from sin. They're believing that Jesus is the Messiah. His ministry is exploding, and we're now at the end of his life. It's Passion Week. And while there's this crowd of people who are excited about the person of Jesus, within that crowd, there's a group of people who have been a nuisance to him his entire ministry. They're the Pharisees, the religious leaders of the day. And at every opportunity, they're opposing Jesus. They're fighting against his teaching. They're looking for ways to trap him. They're judging him and the people that he's around. That they are constantly pushing on and antagonizing Jesus. And it finally gets to the point that Jesus goes, enough. Like, y'all want to keep pushing me? You want to keep trying me? You want to keep coming against me? I'm going to let you know how I actually feel about you now. And I'm going to let you know what God actually thinks about you now. And so in a very public and direct way, Jesus preaches his last sermon that we have recorded. And it's directed at this group of people, the Pharisees. And in this sermon, y'all, he calls them snakes. In this sermon, he calls them sons of hell. In the sermon, he calls them blind fools and murderers. Y'all, this is not like Jesus in Birkenstocks holding a baby lamb saying, peace be with you. This is like savage Jesus. And it's his last sermon. Which, just a little side note, we often think of Jesus and we think he loves us and he's for us and he's on our side and all those things are true. But don't miss for a moment that the last thing that Jesus did in his public sermon was confront some things. That he is not opposed to confronting us in order for us to live the life that Jesus has called us to. And so he makes these accusations against these Pharisees. But his primary accusation is not that they're snakes. It's not that they're sons of hells. It's not that they're blind fools. It's not that they're murderers. His primary accusation against them is that they're hypocrites. And in the middle of these 7 woes, is what the text is known as, he outlines for us 2 pictures. 2 pictures that represent the frustration that he has with these Pharisees. And he does this in a public way with a crowd watching, because he wants them to hear this message too. Verse 25 says this: "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You clean the outside of the cup and the dish, but inside you are full of greed and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup and the dish, and then the outside will also be clean. Woe to you, teachers of the laws and Pharisees, you hypocrites." Just so you know, that phrase, woe to you, that's right here, in the original language, it's more like the word oi. It's like very Jewish, like, ouch, that stings. This is tough. Like, I'm about to come at you with this one. He goes, "You hypocrites, you are like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but are full of bones of the dead and everything unclean. In the same way, on the outside, you appear to people as righteous, but on the inside, you are full of hypocrisy and wickedness." That Jesus' primary frustration with this group of people is that they are hypocrites. And the reason why is because they are so focused on their external life. They're focused on their behaviors. They're focused on keeping the law. They're focused on the way that they look to everyone else. They're focused on being respected and being seen in high esteem. They're so focused on their external life that they have completely neglected and have no concern for their internal life. That Jesus goes, "You guys look really good on the outside. You're well-dressed. You behave appropriately. You follow the religious rules. You have stature and power. You're respected and have authority. You give the appearance of godliness. On the outside, everything looks good," he says. He goes, "Oh, but internally," he goes, "y'all are full of greed. That you just want to take and take and take and take from others. It's always about you getting more. Your whole life is about consumption." He goes, "You're full of self-indulgence. You don't think about anyone else but you. You live your whole life for your own glory and your own fame, and you masquerade it like it's for the glory of God, but it's really all about you." He goes, "You're full of hypocrisy. You don't do the things that you say. You don't even believe the things that you say. And you put these burdens on everyone else to do things that you are unwilling to do yourself." He says, "You are full of wickedness. There's no godliness in you. Like, yeah, it looks that way on the outside, but on the inside, you are a mess." He said, "On the outside, you look good. But on the inside, you are fully dead." And he says this in front of this crowd. He actually starts the conversation by going, "Hey guys, they sit at the feet of Moses," meaning that they understand the Old Testament, they understand the Torah, and everything that's coming out of their mouth is true. But here's the problem: the way that they live doesn't reflect it. So hear what they say and obey it, but don't do what they do because they're not true to it. They're hypocrites. And he gives 2 pictures of what that looks like. He says they're like dirty dishes. Clean on the outside, disgusting on the inside. You ever washed dishes in the dishwasher, but you didn't actually wash them in the sink before you put them in? And so the bowl comes out and the outside is all clean and it looks really good, so you put it away in the cabinet, and then you're about ready to eat a bowl of cereal and you pull a bowl out and on the inside is stuck leftover dried spaghetti noodles, and you're like, "That is disgusting." Jesus goes, "Yeah, that's what y'all are like. Look good on the outside. The inside is disgusting." He goes, "You're like dirty dishes." He goes, "And not only dirty dishes, you're like whitewashed tombs. You can do everything that you want to make that gravesite look as beautiful as possible. But the reality is, under every single one of those graves is a rotting, decaying body. Outward facing looks good. Inwardly, you are dirty and dead, and you don't even realize how bad the situation is. And Jesus looks at the crowd and goes, guys, don't be like them. Don't be so focused on your external life that you neglect your internal life. Don't be so focused on looking good on the outside and be dying on the inside. Don't prioritize your behaviors over your belief. Don't prioritize your habits over your heart. He goes, because when you do that, hear me, you're never actually going to close the gap. And it's impossible to live life in a way that honors God if you live that way. He says you're never going to get the life that God wants for you if you focus on the outside and you don't do anything about the inside. But here's the amazing part. In the middle of these two incredibly condemning pictures that Jesus gives to the Pharisees, he gives within that a guide for us to experience this real and lasting change that we also desperately desire. Look at verse 26. He says, blind Pharisee, blind. How can you not see this? He goes, you're a teacher of the law. You're a religious leader. You know the scriptures. You're supposed to see this and understand this. This is so elementary. I don't know how you don't get it. Open your eyes. It's right in front of you, he says. You blind Pharisee, first, clean the inside of the cup and the dish, and then cause and effect. Do this, and this is what happens. The outside also will be clean. He says, guys, come on. Real change doesn't start with your goals or your resolutions. It's not about your willpower or your effort. It's not about your behavior modification and your outward appearance. He says real change does not start from the outside in. It works from the inside out. In Emotional Healthy Spirituality, Peter Scazzero says this. He says that true spiritual growth, meaning that looking more and more like Jesus every day, growing in your faith, maturing as a Christian, is about allowing Jesus to clean out the inside of the cup, the hidden motives and fears that actually drive our actions. He says real spiritual maturity, real spiritual growth, real looking more and more like Jesus is an invitation for God to come inside and clear out the mess that is in there, because those are the things that are actually driving your actions and decision making. You got to clean out the inside of the cup. The way the Bible describes the inside of the cup or the inner parts of us is a phrase called the heart, used hundreds of times in the scriptures, Old Testament, New Testament. And when we see the heart in the Bible, it's not talking about the physical thing that's beating inside of our chest right now. It's talking about a spiritual part of us that drives all of our decision making. The definition for the heart is this, that the heart is the spiritual part of us where our emotions and desires dwell. It's the part of us where we feel. It's the part of us where we desire. It's the part of us that drives every part of our decision making. He says the spiritual part of you, your heart, the inside of you, where your emotions and desires dwell, that's where we got to do some work. And Jesus says if we're going to change, that if we're going to live a life that honors him, if we're ever going to really close the gap, that it starts there. That real change starts with heart change. That real change starts with heart change. In the book Renovation of the Heart, Dallas Willard says an incredible thing about this idea. He says that the greatest need that you and I have, and the greatest need of collective humanity is, watch this, the renovation of our heart. That the spiritual place within us, which outlook, choices, and actions come, has been formed by, this is huge, a world away from God. He says, you know what's been forming your heart? You know what's been shaping your heart? It hasn't been God. It's been the culture. It's been the people in your life. It's been the advice that you've been given. It's been the friendships that you've formed. It's been the cultural norms. It's been the advice of the financial planner. It's been worldly wisdom. He says the world has been shaping our hearts, and the only solution is that the heart that has been shaped by this world must now be transformed. He says the biggest need that our world has It's not world peace. It's changed hearts. It's the renovation of the human heart. That real change starts here. But here's the problem, y'all. You can't change your own heart. And I know that because if you could have, you would have by now, right? Like if you could just be healthier, you would. If you could just be more disciplined, you would do that. If you could just force yourself to read your Bible every day, you would. If you could just stop drinking, you would have stopped by now. If you could just forgive them, you would have forgiven them. If you could just change, you would have changed. But the problem is that we cannot change our own heart. So we need God to do a work in us that we cannot do for ourselves. That there is a gap between who we are and who we should be, and our goals are never going to close the gap. Your resolution's never going to get you there. Your behavior modification is never going to fix it. The only thing that can get you from who you are to who you should be is God. That he has to close the gap. Don't miss this, y'all. It is God who wrote his law on our heart that made us aware that we need to change. It is God who is the only one who has the capacity and the ability to change us. And it is God who gets the glory when and if we do change. So real change, hear me, does not start with you, and it does not end with you. Real change starts and it ends with God. It is his sovereignty, it is his power, it is his goodness, it is his love, it is his grace, it is his ability to transform and change the human heart that no one else can do. That real change does not start with you and me. It starts and it ends with God. And you know the person who I think got this best in the scriptures? It's King David. Oftentimes we think of David and we think of David and Goliath. You know, we think about the young shepherd boy who comes out with his slingshot and stones, and there's a massive giant, and he whips his slingshot and he kills the giant, and some pastor will stand up and preach a message and go, you have a Goliath in your life, and you have some stones that God has given you, and so you are David, and you can kill that Goliath. Newsflash, Matt Chandler said it best, you are not David! You're not! God's David in the story. But we think about David and we think about his heroism, we think about his calling, we think about his leadership, we think about him being a great king, and we often neglect one of the most significant and difficult moments in David's life. Where as king of Israel, he sees a married woman bathing across the way, invites her to his house, sleeps with her, gets her pregnant, finds out she's pregnant and kills her husband, and thinks he's gotten off scot-clean. And it takes his best friend, Nathan, who's a prophet, to come to him and go, hey, I heard this story about this landowner who had a bunch of sheep. And then there was another guy who only had one little sheep. And the guy with a bunch of sheep took the one little sheep from that guy. And David goes, that is terrible. That's horrendous. That guy deserves death. And Nathan goes, yeah, David, that's you. You are that man. And it leads David to this recognition and realization that there are some things in him that are broken. And they have to change. That things have to be different. That something has to be done. And in Psalm 51, he outlines this reality of his brokenness and how badly he messed up and how desperately he needs to change in the first 9 verses. And then in verse 10, he says this. He says, create in me a pure heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit in me. He says, create in me a pure heart. And who's going to do that? Not me, God. I can't change my heart, God. I need you to do it. I need you to do a work in me. But then watch this. He says, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. Now, this is one verse, one sentence, one idea, not two disconnected points. It's one point. That there's a connection between this new heart and this steadfast spirit. Here's David's point. If I am actually going to stay steadfast, if I am going to have lasting change, if I'm going to be consistently the person that God has called me to be, it has to come not from my effort, it has to come from a new heart given to me by God. That lasting change requires a heart change from God. That steadfastness is only possible with his spirit in you. That you need God to help you be the person that he's called you to be. The beginning and end of change is not you and me. The beginning and end of change is God, and David got it. He goes, I don't want to be that person anymore. I don't want to make that mistake again. I don't want to go back there. So if something's going to change, God, I need you to change my heart. I need you to make me new. I need you to do for me what I cannot do for myself. Y'all, this is the only way that we actually change, is if God creates in us a new heart. And not just one time, around a bunch of different things. That there's one moment where your heart goes from stone to flesh, but we constantly need God to be renovating and evaluating and exercising his will on our heart. Because hear me, if you really want to change your health, you don't need a new diet plan. You know what you need? You need God to change your heart to see your body as a temple and to see the impact of your health on the people that he's entrusted you with. Like if you really want to change, if you really want to get rid of that drinking habit, then you don't need just to hide all of the liquor and lock it all away or get it all out of the house. That's not going to change you. Good stuff, yes. Is it going to change you? No. If you really want change, what you need is for God to get in there and deal with the hurt and the anxiety and the pain and the stress that led you to the bottle to begin with. Because if not, you will find yourself right back at it or at something else. Like if you really want to change the anger that is in your heart, what you need is for God to show up and to fill your heart with his peace and his patience and his joy. If you really want to get rid of the addiction to the thing that you've been watching that's been destroying your marriage, what you really need is for God to get in your heart and help you see that person on the screen the way that he sees them. Because if you could see that person as a son or daughter of God, it starts to change the desires of your heart, and your behaviors begin to change as well. If you really want to forgive them, come on, y'all. You don't need to just muster up the strength and white knuckle it and try to be better. That doesn't lead to real forgiveness. It leads to you saying you forgave someone and still hating them. If you really want to forgive someone, you need God to change your heart to help you see all of the ways that he's forgiven you so that you can offer that forgiveness to someone else. Like if we're really going to change, we need to change our heart. And friends, I'm just telling you, I haven't lived a long time, but I've lived long enough. I have never seen someone who needs open heart surgery operate on themselves. Never seen it one time. You know why? Because you need a surgeon. You need someone who understands the human heart and who knows how it's supposed to work so that they can put it back together appropriately. You need a surgeon who knows how it was designed and how it's meant to function so that they can cut away the parts that aren't supposed to be there and put back the pieces together the way that they're supposed to go. You and I need a surgeon for our heart, and the only way that we're going to change is if we invite the great physician, Jesus, God of the universe, to change us and operate on us from the inside out. Because hear me, at the end of the day, you can have all of the goals and all of the resolutions and make all of the promises, but what's going to happen over time is that whatever is in your heart is going to come out of your life. Whatever's in your heart is going to flow out of your life. Because come on, behaviors follow belief, and habits follow your heart. And your actions are just an overflow of what is already in you. That's why David's son Solomon says in Proverbs 4:23, he says, above all else, guard your heart. Why? Because everything that you do flows from it. He goes, you got to protect what gets in there. Because whatever is in your heart is going to come out of your life. And so if unforgiveness gets in your heart, what's going to come out of your life is bitterness. And you're going to start living with a victim mentality. And the glass is always going to be half empty. And there's always something to complain about, and everything is always wrong. There's some unforgiveness in your heart, and it's going to lead you to be a bitter person. And people are going to run away from you and separate themselves from you and isolate from you because of it. That if greed gets in your heart, what's going to come out of your life is selfishness. And every room that you walk into is about you. And you're constantly looking for affirmation and confirmation and approval from other people, and it's always about you, and it's always about getting more, and it's always about achieving more, and it's always about me. And at the end of your life, if you've only lived for me, the only thing that you're going to have to show for your life is you. That if greed gets in your heart, it's what selfishness is what's going to come out of your life. That if entitlement gets into your heart, what's going to come out of your life is ingratitude and pride. Because hear me, it's impossible to be grateful for things that you felt like you deserved anyway. And so if you allow entitlement to get into your heart, You will never thank the people in your life who are going above and beyond to love and serve you and help you. And you will never find yourself looking to the God of the universe and acknowledging the reality that while you put in effort, you were not self-made. It was all him. Entitlement gets into your heart, and gratitude comes out of your life. If comparison gets into your heart, what comes out of your life is envy. And it becomes impossible for you to celebrate the blessings that God has given someone else, because you're looking at them thinking, I can't believe God gave that to them. He was supposed to give that to me. I can't believe they got that life. That's supposed to be my life. And you will find yourself constantly comparing and becoming envious of the people that you should be celebrating and enjoying life with. If lust gets into your heart, what comes out of your life is indulgence. And you will find yourself saying yes to things that are not best for you, and not only will you do it in part, you will do it in full. And you will find yourself fully submersed in a life that you never intended to be in, because you allowed this thing to grow in your heart, and it caused you to indulge in things you were never meant to indulge in. And I could go on and on and on. What's in your heart is going to come out of your life. It's true in the negative sense, but it's also true in the positive, that Jesus says, if you would invite me in, if you would invite me to change you from the inside out, if you would allow me to invade your heart, that when Jesus gets in, you know what comes out of your life? It's love, it's joy, it's peace, it's patience, it's kindness, it's goodness, it's faithfulness, it's gentleness, and it's self-control. He says, if you would let me in, this is what begins to flow out of your life. And can I just ask you, in 2025, who in the room doesn't want more love? Who doesn't need more joy? With all the anxiety that you're feeling, who doesn't want more peace? Come on, parents in the room, who doesn't need to be more patient? Who couldn't stand to be a little bit kinder? Who doesn't need more goodness and faithfulness and gentleness and self-control in your life? And Jesus goes, if you would invite me into your heart, these would be the things that begin to flow out of your life. Friends, hear me. This is the good news of the gospel. That there is a gap between who you are and who you should be, and there is nothing you can do to close that gap on your own. Your goals, your resolutions, your effort, your trying, your striving will never close the gap. But God, in his love, left heaven, came to the planet Earth in the form of Jesus, that he took on humanity. He lived the life you couldn't live, died the death that you deserve on the cross for your sin. He rose again on the third day and said, anyone who believes in me gets eternal life. And not just eternal life with God forever in heaven, but eternal life starting today. That you get my spirit living in you, and my spirit in you will start to pull out the sin and the brokenness and the trash that's in your heart, and I will start to replace it with love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and faithfulness and gentleness and self-control. This is the gospel. That you cannot do surgery on yourself, but God sent you a great physician. Tony Evans says it like this. I love this. He says, if you want spiritual power, Jesus must be free to be fully at home in your heart. He must have access to every room, because he wants to clean and straighten out the messy closets that you've been hiding. He says, if you want to realize all that God has for you, Christ must be the Lord of your heart. He says, guys, come on. If you really want to change, you cannot do what you've always done. You know what that's called? Insanity. He says, if you really want to change, you need to take a different approach. You need to invite God to do for you what you are incapable of doing for yourself. So here's the invitation, y'all. What if this year we stopped being so focused on our goals and our resolutions and our striving and our effort and our attempt to be a better person and to fix the outside of us? What if we stopped polishing the trash can and instead we said, you know what? God, if I'm honest, there's some stuff in here I don't know what to do with. And I've tried over and over and over again to change. I've tried to fix it on myself. I've done every plan. I've put in all the effort. I've made every attempt. And it is not working. And so I need you to get in here and do something about this stuff. Like, there's this bitterness in my heart because they wronged me and they hurt me. They said some things about me that weren't true. And it led me to believe that I could not trust anyone. And so now I just walk through life cynical, and I feel isolated, and I feel alone, and I feel like I can't trust anyone. And I'm walking through life, and I'm depressed, and I'm tired, and I'm frustrated with everyone, and I've become bitter, and I just don't want to live this way anymore. So God, I've tried my way. I can't do it. I need you to change me. I need you to change this bitterness. Here's my heart. Take it. It's yours. Because I cannot fix this on my own. God, if I'm honest, there's some greed in me. And it stems from this comparison that we moved into this neighborhood and we made friends with these people and they go on all of these vacations and they have all of these things and all of their Instagram pictures are perfect and their family looks amazing. And the more and more I look at them, the more and more I hate my life. And so what it's led me to is to hoard and take more and more and more and more. And what I've realized is I've been living a life about more for me, and it's led me to no one in my life. And I don't want to let this greed rule me anymore. So I need you to get it out. I need you to change it. I cannot fix this on my own. Jesus, would you please do something with this? That there's this anger in my heart. I don't know why I'm so mad all the time, but I'm tired of going off on my kids. I'm tired of going off on my family. God, I need you to change this thing in me because I cannot fix it by myself. Help me, please. Would you change me? There's this addiction that I've been struggling with, and it roots from this lust that is in my heart. And if I'm honest, God, it's been here since I was a teenager. And it's been there so long that it's getting moldy, and it's smelling, and it is starting to fumigate the house. And it's impacting all of my relationships. My relationship with my wife, my relationship with my husband hasn't been the same in years. And I know that this is the cause. I've done every blocker on my phone. I've gotten in every accountability group. And I know those are the right steps. I know I need to do those things. But Jesus, if you don't change my heart, me having a blocker on the phone isn't going to help. I need to be different on the inside. So would you help me? Would you change me? Would you transform me? Would you get this thing out of me? Because I don't want to live this way anymore. I need you to change me from the inside out. I have this stuff inside of me. This hurt, this pain, this regret, this failure, it is in my heart. And Jesus, if you don't change it, I don't know what else to do. Like, what if this was the posture of 2025 for us? It's not I'm going to try to get everything right on the outside. It's I'm going to invite God to change me from the inside out. And y'all, I just need you to know, I'm not just preaching this at you. Because I was writing this sermon, and as I was writing it, I felt like the Lord was just opening my eyes to some things that are in here for me that need to get out. Like, there's this people pleaser thing in me that stems from a fear of abandonment because my dad and my mom left, and I grew up on my own from the age of 16. And so I learned to believe that if I could just make people happy, then they'll stick around in my life. And it's showing up in ways now that honestly aren't helpful, it's detrimental. Because I'm not being honest with people. I'm not saying the truth that's actually going to help them grow. I'm so busy trying to make everyone else happy that my wife and my kids and our church is not getting the best of me. So God, I don't want to live for the approval of people anymore. I need you to change me. I want to live for an audience of one. And I've tried my own way. I can't do it. So would you get this out of me? Would you change me? Would you transform me? Would you help me? I don't want to live this way anymore. There's this indifference in my heart towards my mom that I've forgiven my biological mom for sure. She owes me nothing. We're good there. But if I'm honest, The love of Christ wells up in my heart more for you than it does for my own mom. And I'm going, God, I don't want to be a better picture of the gospel to our church than I am to my family. So would you help me? Would you awaken my heart for her? Would you change the way that I feel about this? Would you get this frustration and this indifference that's in me out of me because I want to love her the way that you love her? I need your help to do that. And y'all, there's this family that hurt me and wronged me years ago. And there is something in me that it doesn't happen very often with anyone else, but when I hear their name or think about their family, there is a rage and an anger that rises up in me, and all I want is vengeance. All I want to do is get even. And I'm going, God, how much time have I wasted being angry at someone that could have been spent loving someone else? I need you to get this out of my heart. Because I don't want to carry this into next year. Friends, I don't know about you, but I don't want the garbage from 2024 in 2025. I don't want the aroma of this garbage to overwhelm the aroma of Christ in my life. I don't want to keep trying to be better and miss an opportunity for God to transform me from the inside out. And y'all, I just need you to hear me. This is not a one-time ask. This is a daily decision to go, God, there are things in me and I need them out of me because the only way that I'm going to change is if you change me. You are the beginning and the end. You are the Alpha and the Omega. You are the great physician. I need you to do surgery on my heart each and every day. Friends, 2025, let's take out the trash. Let's take it out. And let's invite the King of the universe to be the King of our hearts. So how do we really change? Well, I think it's less behavior and it's more belief. I think it's less habits and it's more heart. I think it's less goals. And I think it's more of God. Because the only way we really change is if God really changes us. So here's the invitation, simple prayer that I want to invite you to pray every day this year. Here's my heart, Lord. That's it. Here's my heart, Lord. I can't fix it, but you can. I can't change it, but you can. I can't do anything about this, but I know that you can. Here's my heart. Will you change me from the inside out? Friends, that is how we really change.
You're listening to audio from Home Church Roswell, located in Roswell, Georgia. For more information about this ministry or to give to this ministry, please visit homechurchroswell.com.